Hi friends, today we're going to talk about the movie Lucy, Shimmers, and the Prince of Peace, which was released in 2020. At the beginning of the movie, we see a girl named Lucy playing with her dad, James, in the yard in front of their house. Suddenly, Lucy tells her dad that she sees her grandpa, Jackson. However, Jackson has already passed away, which leaves James deeply disturbed. So, James tells Lucy that while he knows she remembers her grandpa, he isn't actually among the living anymore. At this point, Lucy starts coughing, so James takes her inside the house. Lucy's mom, Isabel, checks her for a fever and, after confirming it, tells Lucy that they will visit the doctor the next day because she has a fever. When James leaves the room, Lucy mentions to her mom that she's writing a book. She says it's about a very sad man. But when her mom asks who he is, Lucy replies that she doesn't know yet. She adds that she saw him in a dream. Her mom assures Lucy to tell her anything she needs help with, and also reminds her that Christmas is just a few days away. Hearing this, Lucy excitedly asks her mom if she can mark the countdown on her calendar in her handwriting, to which her mom agrees, and Lucy happily marks the remaining days. Meanwhile, James goes to his room and looks at a picture of his father, pondering what Lucy said. Although he looks outside to see if he can see his father too, he doesn't see anyone. That night, when James checks on Lucy before she goes to bed, he sees her book and asks what it is. Lucy explains about the sad man in her book. Though she doesn't know who he is yet, she believes she'll become friends with him soon. Her dad doesn't quite understand, but tells her to get some rest due to her illness. As he leaves, he feels as if his father might be in the room with him, but he doesn't actually see anyone. After he leaves, her grandpa sits by her bedside and asks if he can stay close to her. Since he is her best friend, Lucy happily agrees. He advises her to rest because of her fever. Elsewhere, James tells his wife that Lucy claims she saw her grandpa, Jackson. She is surprised, and he also mentions Lucy's book about a sad man. Isabel, though worried about Lucy, assures James that everything will be fine. The next day, a prison doctor informs Father Johnson about Edgar, a prisoner with severe kidney disease. The doctor tells Father Johnson that Edgar's kidneys are in critical condition and need hospital care. The priest assures him that he will do everything possible for him. Edgar overhears the conversation and understands the severity of his condition. Johnson tells the warden that he will try to arrange some help for Edgar. Later, in his room, Johnson tells Edgar he might need an urgent kidney transplant, though Edgar insists it's unnecessary. Johnson says that God gives everyone a second chance, but Edgar, disillusioned, doesn't feel he needs one. Nevertheless, Father Johnson remains determined to help him recover. Meanwhile, Lucy's mother takes her to the doctor, who diagnoses Lucy with pneumonia. The doctor prescribes some medication, but he warns that if she doesn't improve after a few days, she'll need to come back. Back home, James calls his mother and tells her that Lucy saw her grandpa. Though skeptical, she says that if Jackson really appeared, it was no accident, as he adored Lucy. She further explains that Lucy mentioned the house where they all once lived together. Despite being worried about what Lucy said, James's mother advises him not to overthink it. At the same time, Edgar is taken to the hospital. Though the van door opens, he's reluctant to step out. When Luther, a prison guard, tries to force him out, the warden stops him, saying Edgar should be given the time he needs. Eventually, Edgar exits the van. Despite struggling to walk, he insists he can manage, though he eventually collapses and is placed in a wheelchair. He's then taken to a room where the warden orders treatment preparations, believing Edgar deserves a second chance. Father Johnson gives Edgar a Bible, believing that he will read it someday. Before they leave, he wishes him well. Luther, however, warns Edgar that he won't be leaving the hospital alive. Edgar's doctor tells him it won't be easy to find a kidney for him, as his name, being a prisoner, is low on the waiting list. Even though the warden knows this, he assures the doctor that he's doing everything he can for Edgar. Before leaving, he instructs the guards to always keep Edgar chained to his bed, allowing his cuffs to be removed only when needed for kidney tests. Luther, displaying his gun, warns Edgar that there's no escape. However, the warden disapproves and tells Luther not to use his gun, as Edgar can barely walk. After everyone leaves, the janitor is the first one to check on Edgar. That night, Lucy tried to take her medication, but she didn't want to swallow them. Her grandfather, in her room, tells Lucy that now her father would understand how hard it is to get her to take medicine because when he was young, her grandfather also tried to get him to take it, but he didn't. Lucy, smiling, tells her father what her grandfather said, and he looks at her in surprise. Lucy tries to explain that her grandfather is around, but her father doesn't believe her. Then her mother arrives and is able to get Lucy to take the medicine. When her mother gives her some soup, Lucy says she isn't hungry, but after her grandfather encourages her, she drinks it. The next day, while Lucy is writing in her book, her fever hasn't gone down. With 14 days until Christmas, James and Isabel realize that because her fever hasn't lessened, she needs to go to the hospital. After they reach the hospital, the doctor says that her pneumonia has worsened and further examinations are needed, though he assures them Lucy will recover soon. After the doctor leaves, her mother promises Lucy that her parents will stay close until she gets better. Later, a nurse arrives to take Lucy's sample, advising her to rest a bit. The following day, while Lucy is drawing in her book, her father comes by and she tells him she saw that sad man in her dreams. Lucy asks if her grandfather is around, but her father, saying there's no one there, wonders why she doesn't believe him. When her father promises he believes her, Lucy says she knows that isn't true, but that he'll believe her soon. At this time, the doctor says her condition is worsening, so they need to admit her quickly. Her grandmother arrives, and Isabel, very upset, tells her that Lucy is not getting better. They take Lucy to her room while Edgar is taken for tests. Both are in the same hospital. When Lucy sees him, she tells her father to stop, then stares at Edgar for a while. When Edgar is wheeled away, Lucy tells her parents that the man from her dreams is none other than Edgar. She shows them a picture she drew, but her father still doesn't believe her. However, her grandmother and mother acknowledge that the person in the picture strongly resembles Edgar. After bringing Lucy back to her room, her father follows the nurse, asking who Edgar is. The nurse explains Edgar's background, which saddens James a little. Later, the doctor examines Lucy, who tells him she wants to speak to her parents alone. The doctor then explains to them that Lucy has a severe infection, and her condition is steadily worsening. When they ask if this will harm her, the doctor says they'll do their best to save her. Meanwhile, Luther resumes his shift and notices Edgar looking at a family photo. Luther snatches the photo from him and, glancing at it, jokes that Edgar will never see them again. He rips the picture before leaving the room, which leaves Edgar deeply hurt but unable to do anything about it. That night, James tells Lucy's mother to go home and rest because he'll stay with her. While James dozes off later, Lucy sneaks out of her room. She saw a hospital cleaner, to whom she introduces herself. When she asks him if he's sad, he confirms it. She tells him not to worry, promising to draw him a picture the next day. As she walks forward, her grandfather appears, asking where she's going. Lucy says she's off to meet a friend, and her grandfather realizes who she's talking about. To help, he sets off an alarm to distract Luther. When Luther rushes to check, Lucy uses this time to reach Edgar's room and introduces herself to him. However, Edgar doesn't understand why she's there. Lucy tells him she just wants to be friends with him and adds that she's seen his face in her dreams. Edgar, though, is not interested in talking to her. But before leaving, Lucy assures him she'll come to see him again. When Luther overhears Edgar talking, he enters the room, and Lucy quickly hides. Since no one is found, Luther assumes Edgar was just talking to himself. Lucy then sneaks back to her room. The next day, Lucy finds it hard to breathe, and a nurse rushes to give her oxygen. The doctor then explains to her parents that her condition is serious. When James is wheeling Lucy out, she spots Edgar, tells her father to stop, and asks Edgar why he's in the hospital. Edgar replies that his kidneys have failed and he needs a new one. Lucy, looking at her father, asks if she has kidneys too, and when he says she has too, she looks at Edgar and offers to give him one. This shocks her father, who says that's not possible because she needs both to survive. As Edgar is taken away, Lucy's father begs her to stop talking to him, since he could be dangerous. That night, while Lucy was asleep with her mom and Ed, her grandpa came to take her away. After that, as her promise to the cleaner, she gave drawing to cleaner. He smiled at it, and she managed to sneak back into Ed's room. The two were slowly becoming friends, and Lucy believed he would recover soon. Ed showed her a family photo, explaining that his family no longer looked for him. He read a little from the Bible with her, and as she left the room, she noticed an elderly woman in a nearby room. Lucy introduced herself to the woman, who assured her that Ed would get better soon. Lucy then asked the woman if she could see her grandfather. Surprisingly, the woman replied that she could see him. As the days went by, Lucy visited Ed's room every day. 4 days before Christmas, she met another young patient and wished him a speedy recovery as well. On Christmas Day, Lucy saw Ed's wife and daughter arriving at the hospital to visit him. Father Johnson bring the family. He mentioned that Ed didn't know they were coming. He first went to Ed's room for a brief conversation before Ed's wife and daughter entered. When Ed saw his family for the first time in years, tears filled his eyes. On Christmas, surrounded by her family, Lucy told the doctor she wanted to donate a kidney to her friend as a Christmas gift, as she didn't want him to die. Everyone was shocked, but Lucy insisted, saying Ed was her friend. When her father asked the doctor if it could be done, the doctor confirmed it was possible, and her parents agreed to think it over. That night, Lucy said she finished writing her book and wanted to give it to Ed. She asked her father to take her to Ed's room. As they walked, Lucy spoke with every patient and staff member they passed, much to her father's surprise. As they prepared to enter Ed's room, Lucy mentioned that Grandpa would soon sound an alarm to distract the staff, and just as she said, her grandfather made the alarm go off, which left her father astonished. However, James, he still couldn't see his father. When they entered Ed's room, Ed was delighted to see Lucy and told James that she had changed his life. Then Edgar told Lucy that he had met his family. After talking for a while, she gave Ed her book before leaving with her father. But before she left, she saw the keys to Ed's handcuffs on Luther's chair, took them, and handed them to Ed. Although Lucy returned to her room, her condition had worsened significantly. When her grandmother found the doctor, Ed began reading Lucy's book. Filled with joy, he decided to unlock his handcuffs and sneak out to see her. However, as he entered her room, he found it in chaos, with the doctor fighting to save Lucy's life. Sadly, within moments, Lucy passed away. This was devastating for her parents and unbelievable for Ed, who stood outside the door. At that moment, Lucy's father saw her spirit walking out of the room with her grandfather. James begged his daughter not to leave, but she simply smiled and waved goodbye. A few days later, Lucy's kidney was donated to Ed, per her request, allowing him to live healthily with his family. Years later, James and Isabel had another son. While playing outside with his son, James saw Lucy and his father near the gate. When his son asked whom he was looking at, James replied that it was his sister and grandfather. The story ends as Lucy and her grandfather walk away.